Yes, I have an amendment at the desk. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Amendment number 533-121-1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
This is also, I believe, a very simple amendment. This would make our health officers contractual employees with 4-year contracts. They would run with the gubernatorial election cycle and for every 4 years thereafter. I think this is pretty simple, and it provides some much needed accountability to this very important position. We certainly learned that over the last several years of going through COVID. This provides an opportunity for the community to hold this person accountable. They are not elected, and therefore we're given broad power to shut down businesses and to make other decisions that have grave circumstances for the business community. During COVID, I heard over and over again from business owners who would get conflicting information, who were told one thing on one day, something else another day. They were trying to be compliant, and yet they lived in fear, utter fear of being shut down. And the question I kept getting from the community is, what can I do? What can we do? We feel like we have no voice. I know there was another bill talking about an appeal process. There was not an appeal process. And I think that when you talk about doing the right thing, and I don't fault every health officer, and I think by and large they were trying to do the best job that they could under the circumstances. But when you hear the stories, as my friend from Calvert mentioned, you can see where there can be certainly abuse of that power. I think that by doing this simple amendment, by accepting this simple amendment, you've got a 4-year term, just as a lot of school superintendents do throughout the country, and that we do. We are accountable to our citizens, to our business community. And I think that this important position should also have that same accountability. So I ask for your support in this common sense amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to rise to support this amendment, but I want to bring a little context. First of all, health officers do a lot more than happened in the last 2 years. Everyone thinking right now, COVID, and it's a big deal, and they had a lot on their plate. It goes way beyond that. Our health officers deal with all environmental issues, inspections, the opioid crisis. In our county, our health officer and his staff have done a lot to prioritize the opioid crisis in our county, which is a great thing, and they work with the elected officials. It has to do with noxious weeds, burning fire. There's lots and lots of things other than a pandemic that go on all the time with health officers. And sometimes they need to talk to their elected officials, and they need to be guided. What are the priorities of the counties? That's why we have elected officials. And many health officers go along with that, and sometimes they don't necessarily have the same priorities, but they need to. The one thing that I think forgot to be mentioned, and I'm supporting this amendment because there needs to be some accountability. MACo is strongly opposing this bill, and they talk about why. Government-appointed officials overwhelmingly serve at the pleasure, all of them, whether it's the Department of Planning, Department of Economic Development, everybody in county government serves at the pleasure. And now this one body, this one local person is not going to serve at the pleasure of the governing body or the elected official who appointed them. Current law provides an existing check of this commonplace authority, recognizing the dual county-state role of a local health officer serving at the pleasure of both governmental levels, the county government and the state secretary. House Bill 609, and this is what we're trying to fix in this amendment, is both an overwhelming administrative burden and potentially undemocratic. Maryland's local health officers have helped prevent COVID-19 pandemic from taking countless lives. Their work has been laudable and deserves the highest praise. However, their work is only possible by having buy-in of county leadership, the elected officials, and the public who elected the elected officials. In a situation in which a health officer was to disregard local, state, and federal guidance and breach the public's trust, this bill would potentially protect them from termination or prolong their termination process, preventing the installation of a successor. No other appointed position reporting directly to county leadership is afforded this level of protection. And they have a lot of authority as well. They have the authority to shut your restaurant down, your business. They have the authority to quarantine you to your home. They have the authority to tell you what to do with your property. So they have a lot of authority, and to have no accountability to anyone is really unbelievable. Moreover, this is continuing to read the Mako testimony from all of our counties, from our counties that we work with. Moreover, this bill removes the discretion and autonomy available to newly elected county leadership to help select heads for their local health departments. Understanding local health officers play a role in many government operations, including the enforcement of nuisance violations and oversight of restaurants and other facilities. Our shared constituents will lose the ability to use the election to impact policies, having advanced and contributed to legislation in service of their communities. County leadership should have the ability to decide who will act as their advocate within government and with the public. This bill is grounded in good intentions, but it creates substantial protections for bad actors and dilutes the ability of voters to influence policy. So they strongly oppose this bill, and this amendment will help to make it better. I still think the bill is a bad bill, but this amendment will try to make it better. So I urge you to support this amendment. Thank you.
Gentleman from Talbot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise in support of the amendment. And even though I know my health officers wouldn't support this amendment, but the fact of the matter of what we're debating today is the underlying bill. And the underlying bill is dangerous. The underlying bill creates far more problems than already exist. You can predict what's going to happen. We'll have a health officer who's removed, and the next thing will be a lawsuit. And you're just creating legal grounds. It does nothing to solve the problems that the health officers have been dealing with and the communities have been dealing with health officers over the last couple of years. And I know health officers don't want to be political. They don't want to have to go out and run for office. But if we continue to go down the road of saying that health officers are protected, they're special, they're unfettered, they use, and science now has become a huge issue, right? They're going to be on this high pillar to make decisions that affect everyone. However, they're not going to be accountable to anyone. That mental philosophy is going to push this issue further and further. And health officers may support this underlying bill, but concepts like requiring health officers to seek public office and be accountable directly to the people on a periodic basis is going to be very, very popular moving forward. What we've been through has affected everyone. Most people never paid attention to health officers. Now, health officers are coffee table conversation. They're on everyone's dining room. This amendment has been explained. It's been justified. It's very credible, and it is a way to go about resolving many of the problems that we've been dealing with, both within our health offices and both within our community. So I urge everyone to cast a green vote in support of this amendment.
Maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just one item that came up in the discussion today is about political appointees. When there's a new governor, there's a lot of cabinet secretaries, and I believe they're appointed. So that's one thing to clear up. We talk a lot on this floor about guardrails. We got to put up some guardrails. This is a simple guardrail that provides accountability to what we have learned is a very powerful position, more than any of us ever knew. And I heard the long process for removal, and our minority leader explained the very vague term of insubordination. I think in light of what can happen when you have a health officer that is acting with impunity, using science, which, as we have all learned, could change coming from the CDC from a Friday to a Monday, subject to their interpretation and enforcement, and a lot of power. I think limiting this position to a 4-year term that could, if it's a great health officer and there are no problems, renew the contract. Work there for 20 years or more. But a 4-year term provides very much needed accountability. I think it's very reasonable, and I press the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
On the amendment,
Madam Speaker.
gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support this amendment, and I know my good friend from PG County, Prince George's County, and Anne
Prince
Arundel County,
George's.
I corrected myself, and Anne Arundel brought something up that said this is not a political position. Well, it is, because look who appoints them. The governing body of the county appoints them. The secretary, that's an elected political position. The Secretary of Health appoints them. That's also an appointed position. I think we all serve at the pleasure of someone. We serve at the pleasure of our constituents. This amendment is equivalent to a performance review. So every 4 years, when there's a new administration, they review the performance of the health officer. And if the performance is good, they get to stay. If the performance is not good, they don't get to stay. It is that simple. Presidents have term limits. Presidents, mayors, city councilmen, every single person is up for re-election, up for reappointment every 4 years or every however years. If we pass this bill without this amendment, we might as well just change his name or her name to Supreme County Health Officer, because there's the other person that does have a lifetime appointment are Supreme Court justices. This is the right direction to support this amendment, and I'll be a green vote on this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.